a wonderful ballet. If you've never seen it, you have to see it. It's a beautiful ballet. All right. I'm going to introduce in just a second here Bud's daughter, Maria, here. And I just want to say one quick thing about Maria. So I've known Maria since she was a little squirt, okay? And one of my fondest memories of Ballet Northwest performances would be I'd be taking tickets at the front door, and Maria would be there, and she was very official. This was her job, and she was about 3 or 4. And I would be tearing the tickets, and she would take them, and then she'd put them in the little tube where they went. And if anybody else tried to get in there, that was Maria's job, okay? So she was very good at it. It's great to see her now. I haven't seen her in a number of years. It's wonderful to see her again. And I really look forward to hearing what she has to say about her dad. Maria?
Okay, my speech is going to be a little bit different than everybody else's, and I think that he gave me a great introduction with the ticket-taking story, because I actually was the only person that almost got kicked out of the hospital, and that's fine, because I was advocating for my dad's care, but I've always been a little bit different. I was adopted, and they got me from dual military blood, so I don't think they should be surprised that I am the way that I am. But yeah, I was advocating for his care, and they thought it was more important to just kind of like clean him up. And she was like, "You can get out of the room," and I'm like, "No, we're not gonna do that now." So I would do anything for him, and I always did. I stayed there. I slept one of the nights across 3 hard chairs. I slept also on a yoga mat, and then finally I came to my senses and bought an air mattress. But I wanted to share just I know everybody knows him as like Bernard and Ballet Northwest and ballet, and I wanted to share some kind of other facts that maybe people didn't know about him. So he was an evergreen professor, and some of my earliest memories with him were going to Evergreen, and we would always go to the bookstore, and we would get art supplies, and I would sit in his office, and I would draw on his whiteboard, and I would color things and do whatever with the art supplies that we got from the bookstore. He always would get me some chocolate too. I don't remember, like, I wanted it because I had a picture of an animal on it, but it was dark chocolate, so I didn't actually want it. I don't know why we go with that every time. But yeah, I remember going with him all the time to that, and later on, for my undergraduate degree, I did go to Evergreen, and there were many professors that I took from who would, as soon as they heard my name, were like so happy that that I was in their class, and immediately would be like, "I remember him, I'm so happy you're here." So that was, well, it was a little bit annoying. Same thing with all my jobs in Olympia growing up. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're Bud Johansen's daughter," and I was like, "But I'm my own person too." And but yeah, everybody knew me everywhere. And so I remember that growing up. I also remember being little and dancing in the adult classes. I think it was like as soon as I could walk. I think I was also given point shoes to wear as soon as I could walk, which was against the normal rules. But I turned out fine. Well, not fine. I have fibromyalgia and like disc herniation, so not fine, but kind of fine. So I just remember my dad wanting to help everybody. One of the memories at Evergreen with him teaching that I remember the most was him doing private lessons with a girl that had like an anoxic brain injury from scuba diving where she came up too quick. And he was doing private lessons with her to help her like regain her balance and her motor skills. And it just being so young and seeing that and seeing him be so supportive, but also treating her just like he would treat anybody else really made an impact on me and made an impact on how I've approached life and how I've approached everybody that I've encountered in life, to treat them the same, no matter their background or what has happened to them or who they are. I also want to talk about, he loved his pet fish. Nobody has mentioned that. So when we lived off Quint Street, he had multiple aquariums in our basement. It was a 3-story house. And I remember him having all these different fish, and sometimes we would get fish like that I wanted to get, but that it never ended up working out. Like I wanted one that like the bubble cheeks, and then they kept like dying, and so we just gave up on that. But he got me those. He also got me some pet toads. I don't actually remember if he okayed that with my mom first or not. But they lived for a long time, and we let them like hop around in our backyard near the end of their life, and so that was fun. We also had guinea pigs, and we had pet birds. We also had a canary that was on Valium. I believe that it had, you'll have to ask my mom. I think it was like some kind of seizure issue or something, but I always thought that was interesting. So also I wanted to mention, we've always had animals. I think it kind of drove my dad a little nuts, like a lot of animals. So one of my biggest memories was my mom having Labrador retrievers, and there were multiple times that these dogs pulled my dad down on his face, and my mom couldn't help but laugh about it. One time I think was going down East Bay Drive. I also remember it at the ocean, but yeah, it was, she's the one that wanted the dogs, but he'd fall down and she thought it was funny, and he just kind of went along with it. And even up until his last few years, I remember I asked my mom if I could bring a couple of dogs home, and she said it was fine. She didn't tell him, and I came home with them, and he freaked out. And he was like, "What are these?" And I'm like, "They're chicken protectors." And he's like, "Well, whose are they?" And I'm like, "They're mine." And he's like, "They better not be." And then he called her like the equivalent of like urgency of somebody calling 911. Like, he's like, "She just brought home more animals. What are we gonna do?" And so, but then he ended up loving them, and the dogs loved him too. But so I was blessed growing up with many different animals. I also remember my dad, he always volunteered at my schools when I was growing up. I remember him driving in carpools for field trips, which like I actually really liked because my mom hates air conditioning, and he would let us have the air conditioning on in the car. So that was really nice. Also, you're gonna have to ask my mom about this one, but apparently when I was in kindergarten, he volunteered for something called, I think it was like Zero the Hero, and he dressed up in some like costume for it, I think. So you'll have to ask her, because that was when I was 5, and I'm 36 now, so I do not remember that. I also really remember going to Hawaii. He absolutely, the Nutcracker drove him nuts. So growing up, every other year when we did the Nutcracker alternating with the Christmas Carol, we would go to Hawaii after. And I remember going there for Christmas, and until I grew up, I didn't realize what a different memory that was. And I'm super thankful that I had that unique experience. And he also, so when I was younger, I was about 13, we traded horseback riding lessons with the Hayward family, which I'm sure he probably later regretted because horses are very expensive. But I was about 13, and we started trading riding lessons, and then we bought my first horse, and then when I was 18, me and him, just the two of us, drove out to Minnesota, and we bought another horse and picked up a horse trailer and drove back, and we got more horses. And he was always really helpful with that, and he enjoyed like being around the horses and helping with them. And so it was just a big blessing to have that willingness of how my parents always wanted to help other people and do what they could to get everybody engaged in ballet. And it gave me this huge blessing of being introduced to the horses, which has made a huge impact on my life. I remember him, he'd almost always listen to my mom, but also sometimes he'd go against what she said. I remember we were in Hong Kong, and she told him not to eat any raw seafood, and he did not listen to that, and then later regretted it. I also remember when we, our first European trip, we were in England, and my mom had everything so strictly planned out, and me and him were both like a little bit frustrated with it, but we were both like scared to stand up to her, so we just kind of went along with it. But then she got food poisoning for a day, and we were so excited that we could do whatever we wanted to do with no planning. Sorry. I told you this would be different than everybody else's speeches. And then I wanted to mention too, I don't know if my mom remembers this or not, so I wanted to mention it. One of our Europe trips, if she does remember, if she can say which one it was, we were just out and about, and somebody came up and was like, "Bud Johansen." And it was a guy that had been one of his students at Evergreen. So at this point, it was probably, I believe we started traveling to Europe when I was in like early middle school, so sometime during that time before high school, and it was somebody that years ago had taken from him at Evergreen and remembered him. And so I just think that's a huge example of what an impact that he has made on everybody. And then another story, which I did tell my mom about, so she knows about this one, but when I was 18 and I was just working like a minimum wage job, I had a cat that got stepped on by a horse, and it needed its leg amputated, and I couldn't afford it. And he told me, he was like, well, I have some money that she's given me that I've hidden in a drawer. He's like, I'll help you out a little bit, but you can't tell her. And so I was able to get my cat taken care of with his help, and I waited till like the last like year or so to tell her, and then she wasn't mad because it's been another 18 years. So the last animal that I got was a little Jack Russell, or not Jack Russell, it was a Chihuahua mixed with, we think, like a mini pin. And my dad, at first, he was mad. I got it on accident when my mom was in the hospital. I didn't know she was gonna like be in the hospital. It's coincidental. And she came home, and I was like, so I have something to tell you. I want to show you something, but also I don't want you to be mad at me. I got this puppy, and she was like, oh no. But that little dog absolutely loved my dad, and he stayed with him constantly, and he was obsessed with him, and we actually got it so that he was able to go visit him in the rehab facility before my dad was transferred to the hospital. So it was just wonderful. It was supposed to be my dog, but it totally ended up being my dad's dog. And I have a few memories from both of my dad's strokes. After his first stroke, when he was still pretty out of it before he went to rehab or anything, everybody was in the room, and I think I hadn't seen him for a few days, and I walked in, and he goes, "You are so beautiful." And I just was so taken aback by him noticing that, and it meant so much to me. The second memory that I had from his most recent hospital admission was that I give myself shots for my chronic pain issues, and I was talking about needing to give myself a shot, and I was like, do you think I can do it in here? And it was a few days before he passed, and he was pretty out of it, but he looked at me and he said, "I'll protect you." And that meant so much to me. It surprised me, but it also like meant the world to me. I wanted to finish up. I know I'm probably beyond my 5 minutes. I'm sorry, whoever's mad at me. But I want to finish up with a few random things. I don't know. I know there's some dancers my age here, so I don't know who will remember this. This is like semi-appropriate, but one of my fondest memories of my dad was when we were downstairs, like rehearsing for a performance here, and we had a TV and downstairs, and there was cable, and we were watching something. I think it was either on VH1 or MTV, and my dad walked by, and he goes, "Is that the one with the hose? You know, the area codes?" And we were, like, unless you're my age, you probably won't get it, but we were like, what? And that was from the times that my dad wasn't listening to the Mariners. He was listening to what me as a child wanted to listen to on the radio. So that was a very fond memory of me that I've brought up with my mom over the years. I think she's kind of forgotten it selectively, but it was just so completely random, but also like hilarious that he paid that much attention just to the music that I was listening to remember that and say that. I'm sure everybody knows that he loved the Mariners and he loved his bourbon. And the last thing that I'm going to tell you that you probably don't know, and I don't actually know if this is true or not, but my previous neighbor, her mom told me that my dad used to get drunk and go over to the neighbor's house and ride the cows around. I don't think that's true, but just for fun, I thought it was, she's convinced it's true, but just for fun, I thought it was worth sharing. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to me, and I appreciate everybody's support. you.